Our top story today, President Biden says as many as 150,000 Russian troops are still surrounding Ukraine. Claims from Moscow that it is withdrawing some forces are being met with skepticism in the West. Holly Williams is in Kyiv with more. Holly, good morning. What are you learning?
Good morning. Well, President Biden addressed the Russian people directly yesterday, saying, quote, "You are not our enemy, and I do not believe you want a bloody, destructive war in Ukraine." But now all eyes are on Russia's President Vladimir Putin and what he decides to do next.
Russia released this video claiming it shows some of its troops pulling back from Ukraine's border. But even if it can be verified, massive Russian military drills are ongoing in Belarus, on Ukraine's northern border, and on the Black Sea just to the south. Here in Ukraine, there's no sigh of relief. Instead, cyber attacks on two banks and the Defense Ministry, though Ukrainian authorities have stopped short of blaming them outright on Russia.
I have my emergency bag in my flat, and I'm ready to defend my country.
It's two different countries, and they must understand that it's two different countries.
If Vladimir Putin really has decided against an invasion, it could be because the US and its allies have made the cost too high, supplying weapons to Ukraine and threatening Putin with unprecedented sanctions hitting his inner circle and their family members.
Vladimir Putin is a human rights violator and a kleptocrat and a very rich man.
Bill Browder was once one of the biggest foreign investors in Russia, but then he started campaigning against Russian corruption. He told us Putin's been treated too softly in the past, sending a dangerous message.
He invaded Georgia. He took Crimea. He bombed civilians in hospitals in Syria. He cheated in the Olympics. From his standpoint, he's gotten away with everything. And unless we can actually prove to him that we're serious, he'll think he can get away with it again.
Belarus claims all Russian forces will leave its territory when those military exercises end this weekend. Let's see if that happens. And yesterday, Russia again dismissed fears of an invasion, saying, quote, dismissed fears of an invasion as, quote, Western war propaganda. Lana and Vlad.
So it's interesting, Holly, because no conventional attacks, obviously, as of yet. But still, Ukraine's state banks, their defense ministry, their armed forces all had cyber attacks yesterday. Do we know anything more about who's behind them? And might this be a strategic move by Russia?
Well, so Ukraine says that those attacks were distributed denial of service attacks. That's when essentially hackers flood a network with lots of data so that it's paralyzed. And the Ukrainians actually put out a statement saying that it is not ruled out that the aggressor used tactics of dirty little tricks. So the implication there is that it could be Russia, but they certainly haven't named Russia directly. Russia, for its part, denies any involvement. But why is this so interesting? Well, you've just put your finger on it there. It's thought that any invasion of Ukraine would be preceded by massive cyber attacks hitting Ukraine's critical infrastructure. And in fact, we should point out that suspected Russian hackers have hit Ukraine's critical infrastructure before, taking down parts of the power grid more than once.
Also, Holly, we've learned, CBS News has learned that Russia continues to set up field hospitals and move in blood supply. So what does that signal to you?
Well, look, the US has said that a Russian invasion could happen any day and at very short notice. When people see those kind of things, sort of medical infrastructure moving in, certainly a lot of people will read into it that, you know, that an invasion could be imminent. Remember, though, Russia has consistently maintained that it has no plans to invade Ukraine, though from the perspective of the US and its allies, including Ukraine, that does not provide, you know, a plausible reason for there being now, according to the US's estimate, more than 150,000 Russian troops massed on Ukraine's border. But don't rule out the possibility that this entire crisis, this entire enterprise is essentially a giant game of Cold War-style brinkmanship on the part of Russia that is raising the spectre of an invasion to try to extract concessions from the US and its allies.
So, Holly, Putin has said that Russia is going to partially pull back troops. As you mentioned, 150 are there. Is there a number of troops that are going to be seen as a real concession by Russia?
Well, we don't know any numbers so far. All we've seen is this video from the Russian Ministry of Defense that purports to show some of those troops, moving back from the border. But remember that President Biden has said that the US can't verify that any kind of partial withdrawal has taken place, and NATO has essentially said the same thing. They haven't seen any sign of de-escalation on the ground, and that new number of Russian troops on the border, more than 150,000 according to the US, that's up from 130,000 previously and 100,000 before that. Here in Kyiv, the idea that Russia is actually withdrawing, this is all over, is being treated with a huge dollop of skepticism. And remember, this is a country that's been living with the reality of Russian aggression for 8 years now. A war in eastern Ukraine for nearly 8 years, and Russia has previously invaded this country, seizing control of the Crimean Peninsula. And this is not the first time they've had thousands and thousands of Russian troops massed on their border.
Absolutely. All right. Holly, thank you.